I would say that I kind of present myself and what I am as a key business strategist, critical thinker, financial advisors to entrepreneurs and entrepreneurial thinking people. We're known as the people that help people create multi-generational wealth. And I think that the idea is that, so many people were making decisions in a vacuum. And if you're familiar with the concept of turbocharging, where, for most people, 1 + 1, they think equals 2. But for most people, 1 + 1 equals, with all the friction.
Hey, it's Rocky. Welcome to Richer Soul. Today's guest is Mark Murphy, who will share what the ultimate investment is. Imagine it's 12 months from now, and you've achieved your major life goals. How does it feel to be in the best shape of your life? To wake up energized, excited about the day? To have great relationships and friends who support you and propel you forward? How does it feel to have an excess of money, to be able to make the choices you want? To be fearless and open to trying new adventures? Imagine being connected to the universe and it providing everything you desire. It's possible over time, and your past does not dictate your future. The only thing holding you back from this vision is you. It's time to take control of our thoughts and use them to our advantage. Welcome to Richer Soul, where we achieve our dreams and bring balance to health, wealth, relationships, time, and spirituality. If you have not had a chance to listen to episodes 1 through 9, I encourage you to go back and listen to the framework behind Richer Soul and how to create the life of your dreams. You can also find all the show notes for this episode at richersoul.com. Today's quote comes from Mark Twain. It isn't what a man has that constitute wealth. No, it's to be satisfied with one has. That is wealth. That reminds me, there is always a bigger boat, right? There is always a new fancy car. There is always the latest, greatest. But are you satisfied with what you have? It's that satisfaction that truly is where wealth comes from. It's kind of also a concept known as Ikigai, and we're going to chat about that today. We're also going to talk about building wealth and building a life that's worth living. We're going to focus on the core tenets that we've talked about many times before. And in this episode, Mark is going to show you how they all go together in his particular instance. You got to figure out how it goes together for you. Otherwise, you're living someone else's life, not yours. Having clarity is a game changer. And that's our goal for you. Mark B. Murphy is CEO of Northeast Private Client Group. He's an accomplished author, speaker, and motivator who's revolutionizing the family planning and wealth management industry. He helps people to achieve multi-generational wealth. Let's meet Mark and learn from him. Welcome to Richer Soul, Mark Murphy. It's great to have you join us today.
It is always a pleasure to be here. It's a pleasure to be anywhere. So thank you, Rocky. Thanks for having me on today.
You are most welcome. And I am always excited to learn from our guests. We always start at the beginning. What was it like when you were growing up, and how much did your family and school teach you about money?
My father had a heart attack when I was in high school, Christmas Day when I was in high school. And I think my parents lived paycheck to paycheck. They were always kind of keeping up with the Joneses, just living to their means, not saving a lot of money. And when my father had a heart attack, his career ended and the money started to really dry up. And it was very clear to me that they had bad values around money. And that it was clear to me that I wanted to make sure that never happened to me, never happened to my kids, and that it was just the pain of the uncertainty of not knowing where the next check was going to come from, which motivated me to get very clear on my values around money.
Do you find that's a prevalent attitude?
I think that most people, I mean, let's face it, 70% of America can't write a check for $1,000. So the idea is that I think that most people are immediate gratification folks. They are not living for tomorrow, but they're living for today, and there's no balance in their financial life. And that I think is a problem. I think it's a problem. And one of the ways that I've personally involved with this is, I've always suggested to people that at a minimum they save 15% of their pre-tax money. They pay their bills second, and then they spend everything else they want like a drunken sailor. And so, so to me, because you can save your money, you can pay your bills, or you can spend it. If you do it in any other order, there's never any money to save. So what the great freeing thing about that strategy to me is if I try to put away 25% of my money, and then I pay my bills, and whatever left has allowed me to do two things. It's given me the permission slip to give a lot of money away to charities and universities and institutions, but it's also allowed me to make a lot of frivolous purchases that I didn't need, that were just fun to do. That I gave myself the permission slip to do silly things, or buy a car I didn't need, or take a trip I didn't need to go to, or buy some tickets to the Super Bowl that were a ridiculous price, or something like that. And I felt that not that I earned it, but I felt that I had the permission slip to do it because I took care of business first.
And so your spending, though, never puts yourself in debt.
I believe in debt, but I believe in only good debt. Meaning, do I believe in non-deductible debt? No. Do I believe in credit card debt? No. But as somebody who's a real estate investor, and that's one of the things that I do for myself is, obviously debt and leverage is a way to create wealth if it's used intelligently, and you're sophisticated on a tax standpoint, and you can use accelerated depreciation and all the things that an investor would do, but would be responsible to do.
And that makes sense. I think people get carried away, or they don't pay attention to what they're doing. And I'll be honest, as I look back on my life, the fact that I automated my savings up front and I kept increasing it, which is basically what you're talking about, pay yourself first, then it doesn't matter what you do with what's left, as long as you don't overspend beyond what's left.
I think that's actually the key. And I think that, not that everything isn't important, but I think that strategy alone, as simple as it may seem, may be more important than any other strategy that's out there. And it seems very pedantic. It's almost something you get in a junior high school finance class, but so few people do it.
Why?
I think our society is an immediate gratification society. We see things, we see what our neighbors have, and you're kind of keeping up with the Joneses. And I also think that for a lot of us, it's an entitlement culture for our kids that, maybe many generations didn't have those things. So you wanted to give that to your kids. And I think that promotes overspending. Can you imagine, just say with kids sports? I mean, I've had my kids play on sports teams where, in fourth grade, the kids had a private trainer and a private coach in addition to practicing and playing, 12 months a year, 7 days a week. Can you imagine me going to my father saying, I need a private trainer and a private coach? He'd be like, just, you got the backyard. You do whatever you want in the backyard. You're fine. You're fine. And if you want, you want to go for a jog, go run up the street. You don't need a trainer. Go do some push-ups and run around the block. Or better yet, I got some projects for you to clean out the garage and paint the house, and I'll keep you in great shape by doing that.
And I totally agree with you. I think we waste a lot of money on things that are not important. And I think everyone follows the pack. And one of the things I saw that you said was you're actually afraid to be the same, which is keeping up with the Joneses, not to be different.
I would say this. I think the key to creating multi-generational wealth, or one of the keys, is it's about mindset. And being an entrepreneur is not owning a business, although many entrepreneurs do. It's about a mindset. And so, I think that, when you go to school, you go think, oh, it's really competitive out there. School's competitive. High school's competitive. College is competitive. Medical school or law school are competitive. But I think when you get out there, I have a mindset where I don't believe in competition. I believe in differentiation. And so what I try to do is I try to differentiate myself. Why would I, in anything I want to do, in my business, in my life, in my investments, in whatever, why would I want a level playing field? Why would I even want to run straight downhill and have a competitive advantage? I almost want to play Rocky in a competition-free zone where the only place you can get that experience is by working with us. And I think so many folks are just doing it, are just doing what everyone else is doing and expecting to get the same result. So I keep saying, I'm not afraid to be different. I'm afraid to be the same. And I think that's the essence of differentiation.
Well, if you're the same as the average person, then you can't write the $1,000 check, right? Because that's average.
Right. It's, and I think you want to be, I think you want to be extraordinary. I think there's a lot of mindsets about that. I think there's, in terms of, there's a lot of things you have to have an entrepreneurial mindset. Not only do you have to have that, you have to understand that failure is just a form of market research. That's what entrepreneurs do. That each time you fail, it's just closer to success. And I don't know about you, Rocky, but for me, there are a number of things that I tried or I invested in myself that did not work. But had I not done that, I wouldn't have done a few other things that made me millions or tens of millions of dollars. Because I had the ability to learn from that failure or not be afraid to take the next swing at bat. Just because if you ever played baseball, just because I struck out in the first inning doesn't mean when I get up to bat with the bases loaded in the eighth inning, I can't hit the ball out of the park. And, a lot of people are defeated. They won't even get up. They won't even forget. They won't even get up at bat in the eighth inning because, what they did is as soon as they fail, they get a gallon of Haagen-Dazs and they get under the covers and don't come out of their bedrooms for a month.
And that is a mindset, right? It's just understanding that these are experiments. They don't all work out. You keep coming back to them. Where did that come from in you, though? Was that something you've always had? Was it?
I learned from one of my high school teachers who I thought was very, very hard on me. In fact, I mentioned in one of my books. I knew he cared about me a great deal, but he thought I was not working up to my potential. And I remember turning in this paper that I didn't work too hard on. And he gave me a bad grade, and he gave a couple of guys that were mediocre students a much better grade who put no effort in at all. And what he made me realize at that point was, his name is Lloyd Jager. He made me realize that it was one of the most valuable lessons I ever learned was that I am not competing against other people. I'm competing against my own potential. And so I don't judge myself on anybody else. I judge myself on what my best is. And what's great about that, what's the most amazing thing about that is it frees me up to be the biggest cheerleader for everybody else. Because if something good happens to me, Rocky, I hope something great happens to you. If I've got $1, I hope you have 100. I want to be there and truly in my heart, be there and be joyful and loving and caring to other people. Because I'm not competing against you, I'm competing with other people. You don't measure yourself against somebody else's ability. And I think the other thing too is I think I'm a pretty good athlete, but I played on a very competitive high school basketball team. And, one of the guys played in the NBA. A couple of guys, had all kinds of scholarship offers to college. They could jump out of the gym. They could do those things. And I had a very good career. And I think I maximized my career based on my athletic ability. And so the idea that I look back at that high school career, did I score 20 points a game? I didn't. But I was a very important part of a winning team and a winning culture and a leader on that team. And I don't think I got more out of my ability than anybody on that team. I reached my highest potential, where there was a lot of kids with far more talent that didn't come anywhere near reaching their potential. And so I think that that's the value in life. I think that is not to judge yourself on other people's ability, but to judge yourself about who you are. And what that allows me also to do is you have to see people where they are. You can't ignore things. You can't have rose-colored glasses, or you can't be Pollyannish. But one of the things I've been able to do, Rocky, is I see people not only where they are, but I see them at their highest potential. And that gives you the opportunity to help really come from underneath people and help them have a better life and help them reach their full potential.
And there's a lot of psychology tests. They've actually done it in schools where whatever they told the teacher about the kid is kind of what came true. So if they told the teacher, hey, these kids are all high performing, they ended up being high performing. And if they told the teacher, oh, these kids they're not doing so well, they struggle all the time, they're not so good, that was the outcome they got. It's whatever you believe is what you kind of get. And there's a lot of psychology in this that I think in the past was missed, that we're starting to realize how important some of these different things come to be?
I think, we have to say in our office all the time is it's all BS. Belief systems. It's all BS. So
Yeah. And that's a question of, are your belief systems BS? Right?
no, but I think to your point, like what you've said is that we talk about money. Money is never math. It's always psychological. Everything in life is about psychology. Everything is about the mind is such a powerful instrument. And I think in most cases, you can will yourself to do the impossible. I'm not talking about something, I'm not going to fly. We're not going to, I'm not going to, I don't care how hard I tried. I didn't have a 38-inch vertical jump when I was in high school. I had about a 3-inch, white man's jump. But the idea would be, I can't do the impossible, but the mind can accomplish. I think that in life you don't get what you need or you don't get what you deserve. You get what you expect. And I think that what you're saying is, I think, right on. If you expect that success, if you expect things to happen, more times than not, it's going to happen.
And I think that was one of the values I was taught as a kid. We were just expected to succeed. And that was just what was going to happen. And at least for me, I did. So it worked out well. One of the things that you talk about, and I saw the video, is about critical thinking. How did you kind of come to be such a critical thinker?
I would say that I kind of present myself and what I am as a key business strategist, critical thinker, financial advisors to entrepreneurs and entrepreneurial thinking people. We're known as the people that help people create multi-generational wealth. And I think that the idea is that, so many people were making decisions in a vacuum. And if you're familiar with the concept of turbocharging, where, for most people, 1 + 1, they think equals 2. But for most people, 1 + 1 equals, with all the friction, 1 + 1 equals 1.5. And you want 1 + 1 to equal 3 or 4 or 5 or 6. And I think ultimately, when you talk about critical thinking, one of my favorite presentations I gave to an international accounting firm about 20 or 25 years ago. And I was talking to them, I said, do you guys do this kind of work, this advisory work to these type of high net worth people? Go, do we do this? We're the best in the world at it. And for about 45 minutes, I said, well, I've got a 35-year-old business owner. Tell me some things you do for them. And I wrote on the board. And then I said, I've got a 50-year-old business owner. And I wrote. And then I got a 65-year-old business owner. And I wrote all the things they do for them. And then I said, I have an 85-year-old. I wrote. And it was like a free for all. They were like throwing papers at each other. They were yelling stuff out. I was writing for 45 minutes. They were having this thing about all this amazing thing they would be doing for these business owners, these very successful people. And then I stopped, Rocky, and I took a look back at the board. I turned around and I said, oh, I forgot to tell you guys one thing. The 35-year-old becomes the 50-year-old, becomes the 65-year-old, hopefully becomes the 85-year-old. It sounds like a lot of the problems you solved at 65 and 85, you created at 35 or 50. Would you have done those things at 35 or 50 had you known you were going to make it to 65 or 85? And the room went dead silent. And so when I think about critical thinking, that's what I think about is what people pay is they pay you to peek around corners. They pay you not to react, but to anticipate what's coming because you know it's coming. And to me, that's the essence of critical thinking.
But where did that thought process of challenging that all and not just accepting the status quo come from? Or is that just the way you always were?
Because because remember, in so many people's lives, Rocky, it's the unintended consequences. Like one of my favorite stories is, you want to tax the rich. So they put a yacht tax on about 20 years ago. And the revenue from yacht taxes went to zero. Because when they put the tax on, nobody bought a yacht in the U.S. And all of those people that were in the yachting industry and associated with it went out of business. And so the intended consequence was they think, hey, all these rich yacht owners should be paying this tax. But the unintended consequence is they threw tens of thousands of people out of work, and the government got no revenue from it. They got less revenue than almost none. In fact, they had a decrease in revenue. And so, part of it is I think that's what you have to think. Like sometimes, like even in my own world, like I could download a task to somebody in my office that might take me 5 minutes. But when I do that, it creates 8 or 9 hours of work for them. So to me, if I'm just thinking about myself, hey, if I can get this off my plate, I save 5 minutes, and I want to get this task off. But then I'm dumping a 9-hour project on one of my loyal lieutenants. That's probably not a good trade-off most of the time. So my intentions were good, was to try to leverage myself and to do other things, but not at the expense of, is the juice worth the squeeze? I mean, I wish if I went back to business school and I graduated from the Kelley Business School at Indiana University, is they ratioed us to death, price earnings ratios, and they ratioed us out the wazoo. And I wish they would put another ratio that they don't teach in school that they would add to the curriculum. And we like to refer to it as the bullshit to benefit ratio. And so I think that too many people are not aware of that ratio because it doesn't really exist, but it should.
The older I get, the more I realize how much everything is essentially BS that you've been taught or shared, or what you learn in school, or what pop culture or whatever you want to call it is. Even the workforce, it's the same kind of thing. Everyone's like, well, we do it this way because we've always done it this way, not because we've critically thought about it and it makes sense and it's the right thing to do. It's just, well, that's just the way we do things, and nobody thinks twice about it. Little by little, it's coming home to roost, I think.
It's funny. I try hard not to be cynical. It's hard in this world of social media and divisiveness not to be cynical. I try my best not to be cynical. But the one thing that I have to force yourself every day to do is to make sure you have an abundant mindset. Meaning there's so many people think that there's scarcity and there's only one of those. And if I don't get it, if you get it, I'm not going to get it. And if I get it, you don't get it. And I think that that's what we've got to do. We've got to create a culture in this world where everybody can do better. Meaning in my world, it's got to be what we call a class 3 experience. It's got to be great for our end user first. It's got to be great for you second, Rocky. It's got to be great for me third if we're in a transaction. And I'm not going to be involved in any transaction where all three of those parties can't do better.
I think if you look at the world, though, it's better than it's ever been. But you won't hear that on the news. Yeah, the average person is living a much better life than they ever have. If you go around the world, most people are living much better lives than they ever have. And there's a lot more wealth throughout the world than there's ever been. And it's spread out more than people realize.
I would make the argument, though, you go back to the mind being the most powerful instrument. I think that so many people, for instance, in this country, who have grown up with so much relative abundance, and I'm not just about the rich or the super rich, I'm talking about even the average person is so much better than they were 100 years ago or a decade ago, that instead of really focusing on the gratitude of what a great life they have and how they could make it better, not only for themselves, but for other people, they complain about bullshit. Their mind goes to negativity. They go to something of fear-based because their mind is not occupied by other things. And I'm a big believer. Dan Sullivan's a big believer in this. Is gratitude and fear can't live together. So that's why I think it sounds like a cliche, but I think when you really practice gratitude, the fear goes away.
It does. So we're here to talk about your book. What inspired you to write the book, The Ultimate Investment?
I've always thought that the best investments entrepreneurial thinking people make is when they invest in themselves. And, so if you have only $1 to invest and you own a business, before you put that money anywhere, you want to put it and invest it in you. But for many people that don't own a business, or for those that don't, oftentimes the product is themselves. And I encourage people to invest in themselves, get that education you need, help build on that technical skill, work on creating a network that can help them going forward. Doing all the things and being strategic about it, but thinking about what can you do with not only with your money, but your time to have the kind of life you have and get the results in your life that you want to have. To think about, I think it's cliche. I'm not sure who, but it's sort of cliche where they talk about be, do, have. I think that, it's a mindset that I want to be that person that I want to become. I want to do the work that person needs to do to get there. And then I'll have all the rewards and title and money and recognition, going forward. And, that's how we've always lived our life.
My thought process, though, is what is the appropriate investment in yourself? And why I say that is You can spend a lot of money on a college degree or an MBA or whatever advanced degree. What I'm finding more often than not, though, is the value's not there. More and more information is available for free. The problem is figuring out, it goes back to critical thinking. Like, is this good information? Just because everyone's saying it doesn't make it right. How do you make those choices of,
Here's my filter. There's only two things. There's expenses and there's investments. If you're an expense, you're always on the chopping block. In fact, one of my pet peeves is when someone says to me, my biggest expense is my payroll or people. And I'll go with it. Well, Rocky, if they're an expense, you should fire them all. If they're an expense, that's bad. And so if expenses are on the chopping block, then I should have an unlimited appetite for investment as long as I can get at least a 4 or 5 to 1 return on my money or more. And so the idea is that's where you focus your effort and energy. And by the way, I'm with you. I think in many, as somebody that's got 5 kids, I've got 5 girls. All of them are girls except for 3. So I'm talking about for the 3 because I think the male mind matures later. For my 3 boys, is I almost view college as a relatively safe environment where they could learn to grow up. And unless you're coming in a specific environment, I get worried that I'm paying lots of money to have them indoctrinated into woke ideas. But I think more importantly, I think you're absolutely right. I think that oftentimes that education is not we're not getting our value for the education, and that there's a lot of better places to do it. I'm seeing more and more people shunning college. Is it worth paying $85,000 a year to get an art history degree? Now maybe if you're going to be a curator at Sotheby's, you might be there. Right? I saw it a few years ago when I was talking to some clients or some friends of mine that I went to college with, and I said to them, "Are you going to send them to Indiana University?" And they said, "No." He goes, "Well, my daughter wants to become a teacher, and the starting salary for a teacher in our state is about $18,000 a year." This was a few years ago. And I said, "Well, what? So there's no reason for us to pay $250,000 to $300,000 to IU for somebody to get a job for $18,000 a year. It'll take them. They'll be 40 years old before they break even. So we're going to send them to a more local college, get a teaching degree, and they'll broken even after 1 year." And it sort of made sense to me, as opposed to some other places where you need to go for the contacts, or you need to go for the, you can't become a doctor if you don't go to medical school, that type of thing.
And so these are the things that I am constantly challenging, in the sense that you can be a teacher and actually probably teach a lot better and make a lot more money outside the system. You can help people with their health. Now, you're not going to be a doctor, but you could probably make a bigger difference in people's health outside the system than you can inside the system. Because the average doctor today's got 6 minutes to talk to you. They're stuck following more and more guidelines. I don't know how much people realize we've become corporate medicine. I mean, it's literally like, your doctor works for Kmart. It's the lowest common denominator out there, and they don't have time to actually spend with you, and they don't have the freedom to do what's right for you. And that, unfortunately, is the system. I think more and more that you can do more outside the system than you can inside the system
But I would also make the argument, I can look back to a handful of great teachers that I had, over the time, when I was in school. But I learned far more from people outside the system, the people that mentored me. Isn't that the essence of coaching? That the best coach is probably the best teacher you'll ever have.
Yeah, but as you said, it was outside the system, even then.
Right. It's so funny. I tend to agree with you. I think but I think it's also individually based. I think that it depends the field you want to go to. It depends on the child. It depends on the person. But I think that was an idea that 15 or 20 years ago I would have thought was crazy. And now I think it's mainstream.
But that comes back to critical thinking. You don't say, hey, this is the one way for all your kids. Each one is different. They have different needs and different desires. And so you think about, hey, for this person, what are the different paths? And going back to your earlier comment, Well, we'll try this. Maybe it works. Maybe it doesn't. We'll experiment. We'll go try that. We'll see if that one works. We'll go do something different. Instead of spending for the coach to teach them baseball, we can spend for the coach to teach them how to build a wealthy, healthy, smart life, right?
Yeah, and I also think it's also to degrees. I think that part of it, as I think you have to look through, is that that everybody has an agenda. Meaning, in terms of what they're trying to do. And I think that the hardest thing to do is you need to surround yourself with people that can tell you the truth. To me, what I praise, particularly when you're somebody that can help a lot of people, so people are generally very nice to you. I think that the thing I prize the most is people that, not somebody that would embarrass me publicly or admonish me publicly, but say to me, hey, Mark, are you really being your best self, or is that a wise decision, or have you thought about this or thought about that? Those are the kind of people I appreciate in my life, and I never beat people up who are giving me an opinion that comes from a place of caring. If you got somebody there that's that I don't care about, that's trying to hurt me or trying to be disruptive, I could care less what they have to say. But I feel myself, and I search for folks that I respect what they say, because if they disagree with me, I'm going to take notice of that because I know their intentions are right. And then ultimately, I've got to make my own decision. And then I'm a big boy, and I'll live with the consequences of my actions and not blame everybody else. I think one of the things we've got to get away from, Rocky, in this climate is no blaming, no complaining, no excuses. That's what losers do.
Today's episode is sponsored by Profit Answer Man Podcast. Did you know that most small business owners hate looking at their financials? It's one reason they may struggle with business success. The Profit Answer Man podcast helps them ensure they are profitable and can pay their employees and weather the storms we all have to face. It's built on the Profit First methodology of pay yourself first. The Profit Answer Man podcast is a must listen to for every small business owner and anyone who wants to help them survive and thrive. Check it out on your favorite listening platform. So you mentioned a couple times creating multi-generational wealth. How do we create multi-generational wealth?
I think it starts with, and we've trademarked our pyramid to that, but I think it starts with cash confidence. You need to have liquidity in your life. That's the number one reason why people fail or don't reach their heights, because when you have a bad quarter or a bad year or a setback, you have to have the money to withstand that and not blow up your plan. But also, I've noticed that I've made a lot of my money when I had cash and people needed cash, when I had the cash to take advantage of opportunities when they presented itself. And so for both opportunities or emergencies, cash confidence made sense. The second level of that pyramid was, I want to always feed my money machine. So if I have $1 to invest, I would either I'd look to invest it in my business or some other operating company, or I'd invest it in myself to help grow, my entity or my goals. And then on top of it, what I'd like to do is, I mentioned we have expenses and investments. We also have paychecks and either free capital or play checks. I want to set up a series of assets that will give me either a guaranteed or a highly reliable stream of income. To replace my income, I'll call those paychecks. And then I want another series of assets where I can spend it, I can save it, I can give it away. But the important thing is it will not be responsible for producing income for my family. So if I have both paychecks and paychecks, I have financial freedom. But there's still one more level. If I can have earned income beyond normal retirement age. So when my friends in their 50s and 60s and 70s and 80s are going to early bird specials and worried about living too long and, afraid to, they drink domestic beer instead of imported beer or whatever their jam is, you can be a net saver in your 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s. And that's how you create multi-generational wealth. I don't want to get involved in politics, but you notice when Donald Trump became president, he didn't sell the Trump organization. And you can talk about all the things that have happened in the interim. But why, if you're a dentist, or why if you're a dentist, why, because you're no longer a full-time chairside clinician, would you sell the business you created? If I went to, Joe, my broom manufacturer in Newark, New Jersey, and said, hey, Joe, you're 70 years old, you got to sell your business and retire. He'd hit me in the head with one of the brooms. Why would he give up that business? Because he's no longer, running the factory right now. He's got his son-in-law running it, or he's got a trusted advisor running it. And so the idea is, why would we stop our cash flow? And, that why would we almost retire and live on almost what's the equivalent of fixed income, because our assets are producing income for us to live, as opposed to living on earned income. And when you teach people how to do that, that's how great fortunes are created.
Well, and I think depending on the business, some people don't realize what a cash cow it can be. They also haven't been the systems and processes so that they don't have to run it day to day. And there's a whole bunch of reasons, I think, why people sell out. I don't think they even see the opportunity to be the owner and let other people do the work.
You want to get paid for what you know, not what you do. Most people get paid for what they do. And when they stop doing the do, they want to exit. You want people to, as I said, that you're the two rules, the golden rules of money we have is your money has to work while you're sleeping, and your business has to generate revenue without you being there doing the task. If not, you don't have a business. You bought yourself a job, maybe a good paying job, but it's still a job.
Well, and I think for many business owners, it is a job, and for some, a very good paying job. And I think it takes a different mindset to be a business owner versus a business operator. And sometimes people may not even know the difference. They may not realize that there are different ways. They can't see, again, it comes back to they can't see how to get themselves out of the picture, because they are the bottleneck in the business because they haven't gotten out of the way yet.
No. But again, I think that's why proper coaching, proper advice, surrounding yourself with the right people. I think ultimately, if as I say, if you want to see your life in 10 years, it's two things, Rocky. It's the books you read and it's the people you hang out with. If you surround yourself with the right people and you're a voracious reader, I feel highly confident that your future is bright.
And I don't disagree at all with that. One of the other things you talk about, one of my favorite subject is Ikigai and the ability to live your ultimate life. And I think it's a concept that we don't spend enough time on. And I don't think people plan. Like, one of the biggest things I always talk to my clients about is, do you have a life plan? And what do you want out of life? And are you doing what you truly want to do and what you're made to do? And are you getting paid well for it?
I mean, I think we teach people to live a life by design. But when I'm interviewing people to come work for us, I tell them that they should look at every job offer through that concept of Ikigai. And so what I'm saying is, you spend so much time working, depending on how passionate you are. And in some industries, you work 8 hours a day, 5 days a week. In some industries, particularly early, you might work 6 or 7 days a week, 14, 16 hours a day. If you're a first year lawyer or an investment banker, or involved in a startup business or something. And so with that type of commitment to the time, I think that I say to those young people the following. We ask them the following 4 questions. Am I passionate about this? How could you do something for years or decades, 8, 10, 12, 14 hours a day that you weren't passionate about? The second question we ask them is, are you good at it? Is this something you're very good at? The third question is, does the world need that product or service? And the fourth is, can I get paid to do it? And if the answer is not a yeah, but a hell yeah to all 4, I would tell you to pass.
And I very much agree with you. I don't know why this is, but it seems like a lot of people get the first question wrong. In other words, they're getting a job to get a job, not because they're passionate about it. I find very few people are actually putting themselves in the right place to do what they're most passionate about. Do you know why that is?
By the way, I think it's a lack of foresight or opportunity. The answer is, it's easy to see from the other side for people, but I think many people. By the way, I think that's a million. If you could solve that question, Rocky, I think I think it'd be easier for you to cure cancer than to answer that question. But I mean, that's why so many people have substance abuse, or they can't wait to retire, or they can't wait to get to the weekend. Meaning it just, that they're just, getting through the week to get to the weekend. And because they don't like what they're doing. And I think that, all I can tell you is that the thing we try to teach our clients to do is, people always say to you, what's your work-life balance like? And I said, I don't have a work-life balance. I go from one thing I love to something I love more to something I love more, and have a life by design, so that everything I'm doing, I'm doing in something that I want to do. And I think as you get more successful, you can really start to add stuff to your life, to the things you want to do, and even do more of the stuff you want to do. And you can get rid of the stuff you don't want to do. And so one of the things I do about every 6 months, I take a piece of paper and I put a line down the middle of the T at the top. And on the left side, I write all the things I hate about my business. And on the right side of my life, and I write all the things on the right side about all the things I'd be doing if I was in retirement right now. So I said, well, why wait till I'm 65 or 70 to retire? Why not retire today? If I'm doing the things I want to do and not doing the things I don't want to do, who retires from that?
And I agree with you. I think I've taken people through this process. I think one of the biggest things is they're scared. I don't know why, but they seem to be scared to answer those questions of what do I really want, or to face themselves in the mirror and ask the question. And then the second thing I find is people are stuck in a box. They can't see the diamonds at their feet, and they can't see the opportunities that they could have. I think those are the two biggest stumbling blocks that I have come across.
Everybody describes it differently, but I'm going to take the 4 quadrants of what I think a lot of people want. Now, you may disagree with the 4. You may have 3 others, or replace some or add some. But I think most people would like to have wealth. Most people would like to have health, good health. Nobody wants to be sick. Most people would like to have love in their life, some love in their life, both romantic love and platonic love. And I think most people would like to have purpose in their life, that I get up every day making a difference in the life we have. And I think in many ways we have limiting beliefs that think to get one, you have to have the other. For me to create the wealth I need, I've got to give up my health, or I can't have love because or this, or, and I think that the idea is that I'm not saying that you don't have to get out of balance or be obsessive about something to be successful for some period of time. But I think holistically over the course of your life, you can get all 4 of those things and not have to compromise if you're disciplined.
I have. I'm sure you have.
Yeah, again, it's a challenge but it's a work in progress, but it's a joyful work in progress.
It is. I mean, when I look at it now, I don't consider what I do work. I consider it fun. Like, it's enjoyable. I'm passionate about it. I love it. It wasn't always like that, but it is today. And I think many of those same things that I've talked about are because those are the same things that I struggled with. Figuring out what people really wanted and needed and were willing to pay for. And I think the other thing is even just understanding what your great skill sets are, because more often than not, you don't value them because they're so easy to you. You're like, nobody would pay me to do that. Everyone can do that. No, only you can do that. You are actually really good at it. And I know for me, that was kind of a lot of the major ahas that I had to go through to realize that. And again, we were taught very differently when I was a kid. Today, I think it's much more open.
One of the things that, people will often tell me their ideas and what they want to do, but virtually nobody will commit to me. I'm talking to the people that work for me, the young people that work for me, will commit to me the exact plan and what they've got to do to reach those ideas or those goals. They'll just talk about them kind of in the ethereal place, as opposed to willing to commit to being focused, being disciplined, focusing on the mundane and falling in love with the mundane. And I always say to them, I sort of end a lot of my meetings with, what are you willing to do that you're not doing now to have what you don't have? And part of that is, it's interesting. I have said that dozens of times, maybe hundreds of times. It's very rare, Rocky, that I get an answer. I mostly get I get some thoughtfulness, but people need to commit. Meaning, I think there's an awful lot of people that think that they are superstars or super elite, and they want all the money and the riches and the rewards and the recognition of being elite, but they're only putting in the effort of mediocre or even good or even excellent, not elite. They're not willing to do what is necessary to meet their goals. Now, if they want to be excellent and they're putting in excellent effort, I think that's good enough. Excellent's excellent. But don't tell me you want to be a lead if you're only going to put the effort in of good, you know. And I think people have to, and so many people want it, but so few people can do it. And that separates the men from the boys and the women from the girls.
Well, I'll be honest, there's certain things I want, but I look at what the cost is to have them, and I'm like, you know what? I don't want to pay the cost to have that. And I'm okay with that because I made a decision.
That's a conscious decision,
yeah.
And that's different. And I think I think you get to an age like we are where people do that. But I think there's a lot of people who are saying, no, I want that. I want the corner office. I want the multi-million-dollar salary. I want the big house. I want the this or that, the other thing. But they're not willing to pay the price to go have it. They just want it.
Well, I can buy a lottery ticket, right?
That's why they sell them.
That's why. Well, you know what? When I spent my time kind of trying to help people on the personal finance side, I came to the realization nobody wants to get rich slowly. Everybody wants to get rich this weekend. And the chances of that are slim to none. And people who do get rich this weekend are usually broke by next weekend because that, easy come, easy go. But just following the principles that we've talked about over a lifetime, you can become very wealthy if you just follow those simple money principles. And yet trying to get people to do that, difficult.
Yeah, I think. Well, isn't that so many comedies? Wasn't The Honeymooners and I Love Lucy and some of the great comedies of our all time was always, every week Jackie Gleason had another get rich quick scheme that always failed in the end. Lucy Ricardo had her scheme, and that was what great comedy is based on. It's almost folly, and I'm not saying you can't catch lightning in a bottle, and some people don't do that, like you mentioned a lottery ticket. But how many people really, really get that?
Well, and even those who do get the lottery ticket, like I said, most of them are broke within a period of time. It's very few that actually win the lottery and keep the money and go on to live their happy life because they've never learned how to be comfortable with money, how to use it wisely, and how to make those kinds of decisions because they never had to. And so there was no critical thinking in any part of the process overall.
Tell me more about your business. Tell me more about the personal finance or other things. What were some of the challenges that you saw?
So I moved away from the personal finance side because I found that people did not want to build wealth slowly. And that was my thing, like doing that. What I've shifted to is working with business owners because a couple of things I found. Business owners are willing to take action because they have to, right? Business owners have the ability to look at the ROI of making an investment. I think for people, it's harder for them, nor are they taught to look at an ROI of an investment in themselves and how they're going to be able to get that. Plus, if you have a job, I think a lot of things are out of your control. There are things within your control, but as a business owner, you have much more control over your choices.
No question. I wouldn't disagree with that.
All the principles that I learned for personal finance were transferable to business finance. They're all the same principles. They're universal principles. Right. And I can sit down and I have the gift of I can look at an Excel sheet and see numbers and see stories. So I can look at a business Excel sheet and go, oh, there's the problem. If we fix this, we'll go the right direction. And of course, once you fix that, the next problem comes up because there's always problems, right? Things are constantly changing. New technologies are coming out. The market shifts. It's the ability to predict what is going to happen and then take corrective action before it happens to the best of your ability so that you aren't always blindsided. And also the other thing for business owners is to build up those reserves, have 6 months of cash so that when we hit a down spot, we can survive the down spot and figure out how to pivot and come back and what do we need to change. But I think too many business owners live on the edge, just like people live on the edge. At the end of the day, business owners are people. And if people are living paycheck to paycheck, business owners are living sale to sale. And that's kind of what we fix. I just find them to be more receptive to making the change. And, you know, the funny thing though is most business owners went into business to do what they loved, and finances wasn't on the list. But at the end of the day, someone's got to run your business finances, or it's very easy to go bankrupt. The paycheck doesn't keep coming.
No, I think you're absolutely right. I think that is quite a failure, is that you have people with great ideas or they have such great strengths. And if they don't surround themselves with people, it's a recipe for failure. I find myself to be very big picture. So I prize the people I try to find around me of people that are very detail oriented, to dot every I and cross every T, because that's not where I choose to spend my time. But without that, we will not be successful.
Mm-hmm.
I need to be more visionary or more, quick start. So, but tell me about your podcast a little bit. How long is this? I should know this. How long have you been doing this? Because you do a great job.
We started this in January of 2017. So every week, episode after episode. And it's evolved. I mean, but the basic principles that I laid down in the first 7 episodes, 8 episodes, they haven't changed, because they were core principles of what do you do? And I've learned a lot more in each of these areas. I've met so many experts, and it's gotten better and evolved. But the core principles are there. We talk about mindset, which you've talked about. We talk about health. We talk about wealth and building money. We talk about relationships, which you called love. We talk about spirituality. That's more the giving back, and how does that fit for you? And we're very clear about, hey, where do you want to go? Because once you pick a target, it becomes so easy to hit the target. And then how do you put all of those things together? I call it your puzzle pieces to create your life. Because I think what happens, too many people are putting together somebody else's puzzle. And then they're like, well, right, I'm not happy with this puzzle. Well, of course not. It's not yours. You pick someone else's puzzle. You got to pick your life.
I think this is all, you're preaching the gospel. I'll give you a hallelujah or an amen or whatever you need.
But at the end of the day, as much as I preach this gospel, not everybody listens.
Well,
and I've learned to let go of that. You want to come along, come along. You don't. We'll give you everything for free. Just go do it. Because I think the more people who live a good life, the better the world becomes. So I'm perfectly fine just giving it all away.
I agree with you. Well, I got to say, this was fun. I'm happy to have met a brother from another mother who believes in many of the things that I believe in, and I hope this is the beginning of a beautiful friendship, and we could serve more people in the world together and apart.
And I hope so too. It's time to learn the secrets of life. So, what's your secret to living an abundant life?
I think waking up every day with a positive attitude, but I've always found that I'm at my best when I'm serving others. And so I try to spend as much time as I can. Like when I created Northeast Private Client Group 38 years ago, this was my vehicle to make other people's lives better. And that's been my catalyst.
Isn't that the Zig Ziglar line? Help enough people get what they want and you'll be guaranteed to get what you want.
Well, I think that's true, but I think it's, not that it has not come back to me in spades, but the gift is in the giving. I never give with the expectation of getting back. I'm not attached to the outcome. If I decide to give or share of myself, it's because that's what I choose to do, not because there's a quid pro quo.
No, I totally agree with you.
That's the outcome.
What did you learn later in life that you wish you would have learned sooner?
Not to worry. In my 20s, 30s, and 40s, I worried a lot. I worried about money. I worried about problems. I worried about all kinds of things. And I wasted a lot of energy worrying about stuff that didn't come true. And not that it doesn't happen from time to time, but there was a lot of energy that I could have directed to really positive things that I directed towards worry. And, not that you don't take things seriously, but usually the worrying was worse than if the worst thing had occurred. That would have been less severe than the worrying about the issue.
And this is what people don't talk about, right? The mind is really good at catastrophizing and coming up with all these things. And you got to learn to turn that off and just let it be and take the next step. If you were to give an 18-year-old one specific piece of wisdom, what would it be?
I think I do that with when I talk about Ikigai. We talk about how they their life, but as I said, I think that's generally the prism that I look through for my life. But maybe I would say to them, it's great to have a seat at someone else's table, but build your own table. Build your own table, run your own game. Don't play somebody else's game. Play your own game.
And that was one of the mistakes I made at 21. I played somebody else's game for a long time. And now I've learned to play my own game, and it's a lot more fun and it's a lot more enjoyable. If people would like to learn more about you and your services, where can they find you?
Well, they can email me at Mark with a K, Mark_Murphy at northeastprivate.com, or they can reach us at northeastprivateclientgroup.com as well. I think that's our website. And love to answer any questions that anybody has. And as I said, I'm proud of our last book, our third book we released called The Ultimate Investment. And that was #1 on Amazon. And I'm right now working on our fourth book. Hopefully it'll be released in the first quarter of 2025. But just want to appreciate you and thank you for having me on your show. And I look forward to talking to you again soon, Rocky.
And I look forward to your next book. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, sir.
How often do you challenge what society tells you or what everyone else is doing? Are you okay being different? Because as we stated, the average isn't all that great. So why do you want to follow them? We all get to pick our life. We get to figure out our Ikigai. But I find most won't. And that's okay. Just don't be upset that you have regrets with your outcomes. I find most of society isn't going the way that I want to go. And that's okay. I'm perfectly fine like Mark is forging our own path. Because then we don't live a average life. We live one that is extraordinary and much richer. Who do you know who'd benefit from listening to this episode? Would you do me a favor and share it with them? I would appreciate that. Next week, we've got Joel Gandera on to talk about his 31-day challenge to help you live your best life. I'm sure you're going to enjoy it. Thanks for listening. Have an abundant week.